Hi, Mike Anderson here. We're interviewing some people who have made Berks County famous as far as rock and roll goes. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Berks County Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And with us we have one of the classics, Fred Bernardo. Fred, I've known you since grade 1. Sat
Maybe
next
before.
To,
no,
yeah?
No, it must have been, I think it was first grade.
We lived a couple of blocks from each other. And
yeah.
we
Sat next to each other.
Yeah. We went through a couple of grades of elementary school, junior high, high school, and some bands early in their careers.
Yep.
And you're here to talk about your influence in rock and roll, and locally and regionally and nationally.
Yep.
You're a guitar player. How did you get your start playing guitar?
Well, I was watching TV, and that show came on. It wasn't Shindig, it was the other one. It wasn't Hullabaloo. It was one of those rock and roll, you know, sort of like pop TV rock and roll shows came on. And this band, The Kinks, came on. British band, The Kinks. It was Ray Davies and Dave Davies and Ray Davies, I think, were the Kinks. They had these songs like You Really Got Me. And anyway, they're playing You Really Got Me. And this guy, I forget if it was Dave or Ray Davies, it was one of the brothers, had this V-shaped pointy guitar, which turns out to be a Gibson Flying V, called a Gibson Flying V. But he had this V-shaped guitar, and he was playing this grinding type of thing, you know? And
you were hooked.
That was it.
You were hooked.
That was it. So I saw the girls, like, you know, everybody screaming, and they were so cool. And it was so cool, and that was
part of the whole thing.
That was it. I mean, that was it. I've watched a number of these interviews, and a lot of people have a spot where they say that was it. Yeah. And that was it for me.
Yeah. So your first guitar was, did you coax your parents into buying it for you, or did you just go out and
it's an interesting story. I actually wanted them to, but I wasn't getting very far. And we were at the Reading Fair, and there was a big display there from Zezwitz Music, who later I became his competitor. And it was win a Gibson guitar. I still remember the guitar and the display, and you had to enter. So I talked my mom into filling it out and entering me in this contest to win this guitar. Yeah, a couple weeks later, sure enough, we found out I won second place. Wow. Yeah, me and like 700 other people. Nice. We all won second place. I didn't know it at the time, except the prize, the second place prize was 4 free guitar lessons with the use of a loaner guitar at Zezwitz Music. Yeah. So I go over there, and I'm like, I don't know, what was I, 12 or 13 maybe? Yeah, 13 probably. Yeah. My mom takes me there, and I go in, and I'm in a room with like 50 other people. And they've got all these guitars, acoustic guitars, the cheesiest one money could buy. And not much money either in those days. Anyway, they were the cheesiest acoustic guitars they'd get with the cardboard box, what we became called wedges. And they showed you like a one note chords, a C chord with one note, one finger, and G7 with one finger. And we had the lesson: jing 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 jing, other chord, other chord, other chord, other. Anyway, we had the lesson like half an hour, 45 minutes or whatever. And at that lesson, they also mentioned that, you know, if you keep playing, you should get one of these here Gibson guitars. Not that it was a sales pitch or anything.
No.
Yeah, right. No. So anyway. So I go home, and this was one of the other defining moments. So, you know, when you first hold a guitar, I don't know if it was like this with you, with your instrument, but when you first hold it, it's like weird. You know, it felt like, they told you how to hold it, put the cutaway thing over here, you know. Yeah. And, you know, it feels weird. It's maybe like same thing the first time you hold a fishing rod or something, you know. It's like an extension on your arm. This is like this weird thing, and your fingers are on there, and it's a night after school, and my mom was a seamstress then. She was making draperies, and she was in her room sewing a gear sewing machine. I'm in my bedroom, and I'm trying to play. I see these things, and I'm trying to play ding, 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 ding. Oh, now I got to change. Oh, change it. Oh, ding, ding. Go to the next chord, you know. Anyway, on the third night, I could do it. I could play C, 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 G7, 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 G, C, C, and just roll my finger back and forth and change from one chord to the next. Yeah. And it was like a miracle. And I remember I went to my mom and I said, "Hey, Mom, listen to this." And I played it for her, and I said, "I can just do it." I remember saying it to her. I can do it. And
it's a good learning experience for any field like that. To experience that little, you just get over the first hurdle and
right. There's hurdles as you go,
and you continue. Yeah.
Right, and the first hurdle was the first hurdle, just moving one finger over on from one string to the other, and that was a huge hurdle. But
and the fact that you can remember it to this day,
I remember it so profoundly.
How important
it was profound. It was downright profound. I remember the class. By the way, on the fourth class, believe it or not, they brought that Gibson guitar out again and pretty much told us we should buy it.
Yeah. And
it was an ugly looking thing. It was an ES-125T is what it's called.
I'm going to look that one up.
It's a semi-hollow body, brown sunburst with one cheesy pickup on it. And it was Gibson's entry level guitar, which nowadays, if that guitar was new, they'd have to charge at least $1,500, $2,000 for it. But back then, it was probably like, I don't know, 100 or something. And that thing just was so uncool.
And you didn't get that?
Absolutely no. I told my parents, no way. And it was really a good guitar.
Yeah.
It was a Gibson guitar, like a real Gibson guitar.
Well, Gibson has a
handmade in Kalamazoo, Michigan, like the real thing.
Yeah.
But that thing was so uncool that I just wanted nothing to do with it. So we wound up ordering a solid body guitar out of the Lafayette radio catalog, which turned out to be one of the worst guitars ever made, and almost unplayable.
Oh, really?
But I started filing the.
Well, if you could play that,
I could barely. It was literally barely playable.
I don't remember that guitar in your arsenal.
It was brown.
I remember
it had a chrome pick guard. It had like 3 pickups on it and a bunch of knobs. And
didn't you have a St. George amplifier back then?
No, that was I think the guitar said St. George on it.
Oh, jeez. Well,
it was supposed to be a Kent.
Yeah.
Out of the Lafayette radio cab. But I think when I got it, I think it said St. George.
I remember looking at those.
I forgot that.
Yeah.
It had a chrome pick guard. Anyway, and it was a solid body guitar, and it was horrific.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter. It was cool.
Yeah, good.
And then.
Well, you wound up playing with the Rooks that we got together.
And around that time, after that, when we got the next band together, the Offbeats, I told my parents, my dad. I think my mom and dad both knew that this was something I really was going to do.
Yeah.
That I was like really hooked.
Yeah.
And I told my dad I need to get a good guitar. This thing is like really just unplayable. And I don't know, maybe I was complaining, who knows. But he said to me, what do you want? And well, like all the good guitar players around town played Fender Jaguars, which was in 1965, $450.
Oh,
now, if you think a new Corvette was probably what, $2,000-3,000 maybe? That guitar, that's like a $10,000 thing right now. And I said, well, maybe I can find a cheaper model. And my dad said, get the one you really want. If you earn half the money,
nice of him to say that.
If you earn half the money, he said, I'll put the other half in. I gotta tell you, $200 and some was a lot of money in those days.
Oh, yeah.
And $450 was a lot of money. So I did my thing, man. I was like taking the Christmas money and the birthday money, and then I was collecting bottles. Remember that?
Yeah.
You could collect glass bottles and turn them in and get 5 cents. Remember that?
Yeah.
The deposit. And I did like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bottles. I was picking them up everywhere, and I managed to get the money together, and we bought the guitar.
Yeah, that was impressive to see you come in with a Fender Jaguar.
That was a monumental event in my life, getting that guitar. I still have it. Getting that
picture
guitar.
of you with it here somewhere in that.
Oh,
there it is. There it is.
Yeah, that's the guitar. I have it in my basement, and we had it in here for a while in the display.
Yeah.
That was more important to me than buying my first house. That was one of the most important physical objects, I guess, in my life that I ever.
I think you got a new amplifier around that time.
I got the. I think I got the amp after that. I got the amp
Fender?
after that. Yes, yeah. I don't even know if I had an amp. Did I have an amp? I guess I had a Fender amp. Yeah, so
well,
you know what? I might have gotten
the
the
amp on that picture.
Right, I think I got the amp first.
Yeah.
I think I got the amp first because I didn't have an amp, so I had to get an amp.
So you were set
and
up.
I was lucky enough to pick a Fender Deluxe Reverb from '65, which turns out to be one of the coolest amps you could ever have.
Yeah.
Got stolen. An employee stole it from me many years later. Back in the '70s, an employee stole it from me. But stole it out of my storage.
You find them. People are selling them yet, and
they're around. Yeah, they're $3,000-4,000 for that amp now. Fender makes a perfect reproduction of it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Which I have one of those.
Good.
But yeah, so I picked a good amp, and it's funny because I bought that Fender amp, and ever since then, with a few I strayed a little bit, but pretty much play Fender amplifiers.
And you picked a pretty good teacher back then in those days too. Craig.
Craig was my mentor. My teacher was Ronnie Richards.
Oh, okay.
I had a teacher, Ronnie Richards, who taught at Whittick's.
Okay.
At the Shillington Shopping Center. My mom used to drive me down there. And but Craig later in life, Craig Foresto was my
No, I mean talking about Craig.
Craig Schoenberg. Oh, Craig was my teacher. Okay, so I had Ronnie Richards first.
Yeah.
And it was Ronnie was a real cool guy and really knew more about music than I'll ever know. But he was kind of square. And I mean, he could play those guitar books. You could get the Mel Bay number 27 and he could put it up and play it. I couldn't play book number 3. But I needed somebody to give me some, teach me how to play, music.
Yeah.
Songs in a band. And Craig Schallenberger was teaching at Shirelli Brothers, and I knew he was in. I think he was in Vic and the Catalinas.
No, he was with Tally and the Hustlers.
Tally and the Hustlers, right? Tally and the Hustlers.
Yeah.
Anyway, and Craig was teaching there, so I went in and he was my second guitar teacher. Yes. And then of course Craig Foresto was sort of a mentor years later.
Yeah. Well, we went to see Craig Foresto down at the C.E. Cole playing with.
I think we were both there.
The Castle Brothers.
The Castle Brothers.
Yeah,
we were both there, right?
Yeah. They were doing Lies.
I remember it.
Yeah.
Were we there together?
Yeah.
Wow. How old were we? 15? 16?
Yeah, somewhere in there. 15.
Did we have cars?
15. No.
Wow.
No. We walked there from our South Temple digs.
So Craig had a white Jaguar at that gig.
Yeah.
And then I was at Shirelli Brothers for my lesson with Craig Schallenberger, and Craig Foresto was in the store, and he was picking up his Guild Thunderbird that he had ordered, and he traded the Jaguar in on it. And he played that Guild Thunderbird most of his whole life, as I told you, that guitar is still around. Had it all customized and things through the years, but if you see a picture of Craig, he's always playing that Thunderbird. And I happened to be there at Zeswitz when he was picking it up.
Wow.
Because I went in for my guitar lesson with Craig Schallenberger.
Nice.
So,
Shirelli Brothers was around at that time.
Shirelli Brothers.
We used to run into all the rock and roll people.
It's funny
that we
because
looked up to.
you'd run into them there, and then, X amount of years later, you ran into them at my store.
Yeah, true.
Which was really kind of a hangout for about, I'd say 20 years, musicians hangout.
And between that, you went, you were playing with the Men of Soul and...
we had various bands with Scott Musselman, who just left.
Yeah.
He was the bass player at one point.
Yeah.
And Chuck was the singer at one point.
That's right. And that's where I got to meet Chuck.
Yeah, various bands through the years.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you got hired by Chuck's band.
Yeah, the Incredible Showman.
The Incredible Showman, and then I guess you referred them to me because you referred them to me, and I wound up being a guitar player for a while. Then we became Stone Ground.
Yeah.
And then by that time we were getting out of high school, and everybody's going to college and moving on with their lives, and that was kind of it for that band.
Yeah.
You went.
I played with a couple other bands.
Right, but after Stone Ground, did you?
Well, with Barry Ellis, we had a group together for a little
Oh, okay. But you were in college then.
Yeah, so I stayed close to home.
So college was your main focus.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, and everybody had a focus. Chuck was in the service, I believe.
Yeah, he was in.
Maybe.
Well, yeah.
The reserves or
reserves,
something.
yeah.
And I found myself, not really sure what I was going to do or where I was going to go. So I had heard that this band in the Lehigh Valley, the Uproar, was a good band, and I went and saw them, and they were a great little band. So I gave the leader, Tommy Zito, I gave him my number and said, I'm a guitar player. In case you ever need a guitar player, I'm free. I'm draft exempt. Remember we had the lottery? Mm-hmm. I was draft exempt. And I gave Tommy my number. Mm-hmm. And maybe 3 months later, my mom says to me one day, Tommy Zito called you. Are we related to him? The Italians.
Yeah.
Everybody's related to everybody. And I said, I don't know if we're related to him, but he's in Bethlehem. And my mom said, well, he called you about auditioning for his band. And I was like, whoa, okay. I got on the phone to Tommy, and I had to go. I had to learn 8 songs and go to King Arthur's Court. Mike Homick, the owner of King Arthur's Court, was the band's manager. And I had to go to rehearsal at King Arthur's Court. I played the 8 songs. I had to sing, which I had never really done that much before. I had to sing harmony parts and things.
Yeah.
But I just acted like I knew what I was doing. And I went there and I did the audition. And then about a week went by, and I found out, talking to musicians in Reading, that all these other guitar players had auditioned, like good ones, like Dewey Wall, and real good guitar players, had auditioned for the band. I mean, I never really talked to Dewey about it, but I had heard his name specifically mentioned. And there were other ones from the Lehigh Valley and from Harrisburg. They had auditioned all these guitar players, and they called me up one day and said, "We want you to come to the 10th race." It was a bar in Wilkes-Barre on Saturday night with your axe. Know these songs because you're going to play a whole set with us on stage. The vocal parts, these vocal parts, and these guitar parts.
For that one?
No, it was a second audition.
Whoa, geez.
So I drove to Wilkes-Barre. The 10th race, I remember it like it was yesterday. The 10th race got washed away in that flood years later.
Yeah.
Agnes.
Yeah.
Completely washed that whole place away.
Wow.
But anyway, I went to the 10th race. It was a cheesy bar, typical. And I played the set. And after the set, Jimmy Keeler, the second keyboard player, there were 2 keyboard players in that band. He was sort of the business guy. He pulled me aside and he sat me down and he said, we want to hire you. This is your salary. You get salaried. I get a salary. Get a salary. Wow. And this and this and this, and you need to learn these songs. It was a huge list.
Yeah. And
we're going to rehearse like 2 nights next week, and then we're out of here. So I crammed as many of the songs as I could. I went to King Arthur's Court the next week for 2 nights, and then I played 150 nights in a row, literally. The first year I had off 3 or 4 nights of the whole year.
You
but
really get your
every other night.
chops together and playing.
I had fantastic chops.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we had at one point 1 night off. I came back to Reading, and I remember Billy Cobham and Mahavishnu. They were playing outside of Reading there at Brownsville Hotel or something. I had 1 night off, and they were playing there, and I really wanted to go see them, but I just couldn't do it. I had 1 night off.
Yeah.
So I didn't touch the guitar from the bandstand on Sunday night till Tuesday night or something. I had 1 complete day off, not touching the guitar. And when I got on the bandstand that first time, I could feel the difference.
Wow.
Because I didn't play for 1 day.
Yeah.
Just the edge was missing.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot. That was a really good learning experience. I mean, if you really want to be, as you know, if you really want to have your chops together, you really got to do it all the time.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I don't know if I've ever had chops like that ever again. Because it was hundreds of nights in a row. All over the place. Just crazy stuff. And
you build up a lot of confidence in your own playing as well.
Yeah. Well, you remember when I came back, I sort of left Reading being like a guy kid that plays the guitar. And I think when I came back, I was a professional guitar player. Yeah. And matter of fact, I remember Chuck coming up and saying something to me to that effect, like you became a professional guitar player. And
we really, we worked together with Uncle Drew as well.
That's when we did the Uncle Drew thing.
Yeah, and all of a sudden we were ready to take it to the next level as far as professionalism. Not only playing, but
everything.
What's the audience looking for, and as an entertainment group, we did. I have tapes of us doing original music when we were doing it at Chuck's Bungalow.
Yep.
But when we started playing, we didn't play the original stuff.
Nope.
We played things that got people up dancing and having a good time, and it worked out well for us.
We had figured it out.
Yeah.
We had figured out how to have a band that's real popular, and we sure were.
Yeah.
And still are, actually.
I know, it's fun.
Based on those 3 shows
and I listened to
year.
some of the tapes that we have, they're okay. But what we did was, found a way to reach the audience. And, and a lot of it had to do with Chuck. Chuck had been playing with Auburn for a while. He
got taught.
And he worked every weekend at the field house.
Yeah, so I guess Chuck and I were both working all the time.
Yeah.
You were finishing your education.
Yeah, so I had to step up. Yeah. I mean, I was still playing here and there, but not to the extent that you guys were.
Yeah, I was all over the place, from Vermont to Delaware and Maryland and Jersey Shore and Rochester, and I worked some of the same towns. My mother was a dancer. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah. And you were a dancer.
And when I was a little kid, yes. Ann
On
Mendez.
TV.
My mom was Ann Mendez, the Spanish dancer.
Oh, okay.
And she toured when she was like 19 or 20 years old. She was on the road, like in a bus with a dance troupe. And
Mendez
years later, in the 70s, early 70s, I played some of the same rooms and some of the same towns that she went to. She'd say, like, where are you going? Oh, I'm in Rochester. Where are you now? I'm in this place in Vermont. I'm in this place in New York.
So
yeah,
I worked
there.
That,
yeah, right.
Yeah, that's
sort of history sort of repeated itself.
Actually, we were only with Uncle Drew for a year, basically, of playing and
pretty
practicing.
Much a year.
But at that point, like 4 of us left, and one of the things that you did was started your music store in Reading.
I had opened it while we had the band.
Yeah.
But when I left the band, I think I was the first one. Was I the first one to bail? Did I start it, or were you ready?
I was ready because I was graduating from school. I was going to work in New York.
Right.
And,
I know Wayne and Corey did it afterward.
Yeah, I think you and I
they were in
kind
Echo.
of, yeah.
Right. But yeah, I had to open the store because after the Uproar experience, I realized that being on the road or being a professional musician, was a pretty tough gig. And unless you're the best, and I was good, but unless you get lucky, you're the best and get lucky. Maybe I didn't see the opportunity necessarily.
Well, seeing the opportunity and going for it is half the challenge.
Right. I'm not a big risk taker, so I wouldn't be one to give it all up. And I was teaching over at Orth's, and in West Reading, Orth Music in West Reading, and Rodney Orth loved to go across the street to the West Reading Tavern, West Reading Hotel, and hang out for a couple hours every afternoon, if you know what I mean. And I'd be in there teaching, and I'd be waiting for a student, or maybe I didn't have students for a couple hours, and I'd just be hanging there. And Rod would say, "Hey, Fred, can you watch a store while I'm going to go across the street." Going across the street meant going to the West Reading Hotel and coming back a few hours later really happy, or maybe really angry. You were never sure what you were going to get.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he'd leave. So one time he left, and he came back a couple hours later, and he practically fell in the front door. And he said, "Hey, what went on this afternoon?" I said, "Well, I sold 4 guitars." And he said, "You sold 4 guitars? How did that happen?" I didn't even know how to do it.
I didn't even know we had 4 guitars.
I mean, I was just hanging around, but I had figured out how to get the register open and put the money in the register. I got checks. I don't even know. I winged it.
Yeah.
And so a little later in life, I realized, you know what? I think I could do this. I couldn't find anybody to sell me a Crybaby pedal. There was nobody in Reading that had Marshall amps. Nobody in Reading that had even a Crybaby pedal.
And
Jimi
you
Hendrix,
couldn't even
Terry
go
Cat.
online and get them at the
You couldn't go online. You had to go to Manny's in New York. So, but there was a store in Pottsville that had the stuff. There was a store in Lancaster that had the stuff. There was a store in Allentown that had all the guys in Lehigh Valley played Marshall amplifiers. There was not a Marshall dealer in Reading.
So we had a couple. We had Shirelli's and Zezwitz, but they didn't carry.
Shirelli's, Zezwitz, and Eckert's.
Was Wittick's
and Eckert's.
at the time?
It was Eckert's, and it was out in the Fifth Street Highway by the time I opened my store.
Right.
But yes,
Eckert's
came from Wittick's.
We had the music stores, but
we
they
had
weren't
the music
carrying
stores,
what they
but
wanted.
they weren't carrying the stuff people wanted.
Yeah.
They were what I guess you'd have to call them mom and pop sort of things. I mean, they had appliances.
Yeah.
Shirelli's had appliances. Zezwitz had furniture, and Ecker Brothers had TVs and appliances.
I didn't realize.
You remember?
Yeah.
Zezwitz
I never made it past the front desk.
Okay, Zezwitz was a furniture store, and you had to go upstairs to the music store when they moved across the street, when they were on the north side of Penn Street.
Yeah, I don't.
Anyway, so I started thinking, I'm looking for this. And then also, Craig Foresto and I, we spoke about Craig. Craig, one day encouraged me to take my Fender guitar apart and change the pickups around. I think he didn't want to do it to his own, so he somehow talked me into doing it. So I was the first guy I know that took an electric guitar apart. And so I had started tinkering. I'm always a guy that's tinkering, as you know.
Yeah.
And I also, being on the road, had connections with real professional guitar repairmen that could do any job.
Yeah.
And other guitar players started bringing me their guitars to get fixed. I mean, we talked about Dewey Wall. He brought one. Guys would bring me their guitars. I'd either fix them or I'd take them to my man. He'd fix them and I'd get it back and put a little on the price maybe. And
yeah.
So I started thinking I could have a store. And I went in town and I happened to walk down the street and see the storefront there on North 9th Street. And it was for rent for $35 a month.
Wow, look at that.
And I rented it. And the night I rented it, that day, I was so happy. I'm gonna make this happen. I showed it to my dad. My dad looked at it and said, "What? You paid $35 a month for this?" I mean, basically told me I got ripped off.
Yeah. That was one of the most popular stores.
Yeah, it got to be real popular. Yeah. Got to be the spot to go.
It was the spot, yeah.
So, and that's it. Here we are. What, 45 years, 46 years later? 1970, September of '72, I opened. And you may remember you painted the front sign. And got on a ladder. Oh, thank you very much. I'll never forget.
I don't remember the ladder.
I think I'm pretty sure you got on a ladder and screwed the thing to the front of the building.
Yeah, boy. I did that in 3 parts. I think
it was in 3 pieces, yeah. It was 3 pieces.
My 9th Street apartment.
It was absolutely 3 pieces, and I think you got on a ladder and screwed the thing into the front of the building. and something I will never forget. And that was there for quite a while. And then you designed the logo.
Oh yeah, the Fred's logo.
A very visible logo that you probably got the least paid. Did you get anything at all?
Yeah, you gave me $100.
$100?
Wow.
Not exactly what you would get nowadays.
No, that's about exactly what I get now.
It's come back.
It's come back down again.
It hit the peak.
Oh, now that you can get logos on the web, freaking out.
Yeah, right. For $3.80.
$35.
So it came back. Well, it was pretty good for a while.
It was good.
The music business was the same thing.
Fortunately, I put some of that money away before.
Yeah, the music business was the same way.
Yeah.
The retail music industry was the same way. You know, we had our peaks.
Well, selling guitars. People
selling
buying them
guitars.
online
You know what would happen?
They come in and they try it out
do.
at your store, and then they
go
go
order it online. Yeah. Well, but what happened to the guitar business? The good thing about the guitar business was every time there was a new hero, I'd sell a bunch of stuff. So, for instance, the best one was Eddie Van Halen. There was no better guitar salesman than Eddie Van Halen.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Because he was, first off, he was incredibly cool. He was, giant superstar. And he played fantastic. And he used the whammy bar. I don't know if you know that, but he can make all these weird sounds.
Yeah.
And he did all these crazy tricks with the whammy bar, and he did it because a friend of his named Floyd Rose, invented this locking system for the strings that you could whammy it like crazy and it wouldn't go out of tune. Because before that, they all went out of tune.
Yeah.
That's why he could do all those, all those sound effects and things. So if you wanted to play like Eddie, you had to get a guitar with one of these things on it.
And you had to access.
Well, at first you had to buy the thing. It was $450, and guys like me had the tools to mount it, and we would mount it. So you'd ruin your guitar putting this thing on it. Pretty much what it turned out to be.
Yeah.
Then the manufacturers got smart, and they paid Floyd Rose for licensing. Floyd Rose became tremendously wealthy. And he was a kid that literally was eating out of cans of baked beans. I mean, he had nothing. And he became tremendously wealthy. And what happened was all the companies paid him for licensing and stuck this thing. So for quite a few years, there are still guitars with locking systems on them right now hanging in the stores that people buy from time to time. Yeah. But for a good 10 years, if you played, you had to have... I'm one of the few guys that never got into it. I never did it.
But you have the knowledge of all this thing. That's what that's what people are lacking when they buy online. I mean, and plus the fact that people come into your store and hang with other musicians like we did back in the Shirelli.
Those days are gone.
Yeah, those days. On Facebook, you see people putting pictures of your store saying, "Oh, I remember that."
My store every day, because we were all playing till 2 o'clock in the morning. And we'd get up late, and the guys would just pile in there. And I mean, we'd go to lunch. Craig Schellenberger, Craig Foresto, Butch Spencer, and I. So 4 classic guitar players from around here. We'd go to lunch at Bob's Restaurant up the street.
Oh, yeah. On the corner.
I have pictures. I mean, every musician in town that you see nowadays, the ones that are still around, of course. That was the hangout. It was a very cool little store.
It was not a horn store, right? So
it was not a horn.
I mean,
store.
You had a couple things.
Every now and then a horn would straggle in.
Well, that was me because I knew all the rest of the guys.
But if I got anything good, I knew where to hustle it right away. So like if a Mark VI fell in my lap, I sold it to somebody in New York or Philly immediately. I had a guy sell me a whole bunch of crazy brass instruments one day. And we had them laying in the middle of the floor, and guys were coming in saying, "What are those things?" I go, "I don't know." One of them looked like a giant, somebody said it looks like a trumpet for the Green Giant. And it turns out it was an over-the-shoulder tuba. Did you ever hear of that?
No.
When the military marching bands, like we're talking John Philip Sousa time, when they would march, the band couldn't hear the beat of the tuba because the tubas, I think they were in the front or something. Anyway, this thing was a big, long tuba, and the horn aimed over the shoulder.
Yeah, so they could hear it
back, so whoever was back there could hear what they were playing.
Normally they're face front.
Right, but they put them at the back of the band. So I don't know exactly how that thing worked, but that's what the theory was. It was over the shoulder so the people behind could hear the music. Anyway, I had they were like Civil War almost. Yeah. Vintage. Of course, I sold them to someone. I don't know who, but they didn't last long. But I remember somebody saying that looks like the trumpet for the Green Giant. And then somebody else came in and said, "No, that's an over-the-shoulder tuba." Like Wes Fisher used to walk in every now and then for some reason, like he needed his microphone fixed. He would wander in, That was like a fish out of water. But sometimes he would say, tell me, identify things like that in my store, because he knew
Yeah.
about
That's,
all that stuff.
That knowledge is what's missing from the markets today.
Yeah, it probably is.
You're retired now. You know, you're still playing.
Occasionally.
You got
On a rare
involved,
occasion.
you got involved with the Berks History Center and the Magical History Tour, and very early in the group when they were just putting the exhibit here together.
Yeah, very
Dave Klein
cool.
was involved back there, but that sort of brought a lot of the musicians back together again.
I think it did.
Yeah.
I think it did. And plus, of course, the social media helps.
Mhm.
You know, we get to interact with each other a little bit on social media. Unfortunately, you know, a lot of my best friends are just gone.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned guitar mentors, you know, Archie Jenkins was one, Craig was one, Butch Spencer was one. They're all gone for quite a while now, and I still
the keyboard
think
player with Barry Petrie's group.
oh, now Donnie Walker just
Walker,
recently.
Donnie Walker.
At least I got to spend a lot of years with that guy.
Yeah, and you did a
He was a
special.
monster.
Was it a birthday thing?
We did like a birthday retirement type
Yeah,
thing.
that was
for
fun.
him.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
And but yeah, he was a real legend around here, and we're losing some of these legends, and it's really kind of a shame, but that's how it is. I guess life goes on, and well, we have our picture on the wall for as long as it stays,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, and that's what the nice thing about we're doing these videos. You know, it's kind of a time capsule of people who've been around back in the heyday of rock and roll around this area. I mean, rock and roll is still here to stay, as they say. But I think it was a whole different scene. We had a lot more places to play live.
Well, it was. I was telling Alexa actually. You know, music that was the thing. You know, from the rock and roll when it started in the '50s through the hippie thing.
Yeah.
You know, and the whole psychedelia area until disco.
Yeah.
It really stayed rock and soul. Let's say R&B music till disco hit.
Yeah.
And disco was like about a 5 or 10 year period of like nothingness.
Yeah.
Seriously, if you think back of it, there's not too much legendary from those days.
Well, and when we started playing, well, especially with the Uncle Drew days, it was right at the verge of there was still Motown, there was a folk, you know, Crosby, Stills, Nash stuff
Yeah.
coming in, there was
Yeah.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears and the big, you
Yeah.
know, the horn band thing
Chicago.
coming in, Chicago. There was a lot of variety of music coming in. And somebody else mentioned before in an interview that, you know, WMMR, the FM stations were playing a lot of different music, and
Yep.
they're playing the long version.
That's where I heard
extended.
Cream the first time.
Yeah.
I
Emerson,
heard
Lake and
Sunshine
Palmer.
of Your Love, and I thought like, whoa.
Yeah. And Emerson, Lake and Palmer came out with the, you know,
Yeah.
it's like, wow. And Yes, and all those
You know,
super groups. So I think we had, I sound like my dad now, you know. I think we had a nicer variety of songs to work from.
Well, it was for us.
It was for us.
So did you see The Who on the Smothers Brothers when they smashed their instruments and exploded?
I didn't see it
things?
live, but I've seen
Okay.
it on Facebook.
Yeah, right.
Or on
Right.
YouTube.
So I saw that night too, and I was like, wow. And the other thing was, I'll tell you another influence on me. John Hampel, who you may remember, was a friend of ours in junior high school.
Sure.
He was really into like the British pop scene. Now he wasn't a musician, but he was like a pop fan. You know,
Yeah.
he was like a fan of the British thing. And I remember him saying to me one time, he said, I read about this guitar player. His name's Eric Clapton, and he's the best blues guitar player in the world, and you should be like him. And I said, well, Eric Clapton, huh? He said, yeah. He said, look, and he got the article, and he said, look, Eric Clapton says to be a good blues guitar player, you have to eat soul food.
That's right. You mentioned
So
that.
I said, soul food? He says, that's what he says, eat soul food. And I'm still like, soul food? And it's funny because we were playing soul music.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a clue. I went to my mom.
Oh, yeah.
And I said,
A soul
Mom, like,
food
what's
expert.
soul food? And like, all she knew about was like, you know, spaghetti and meatballs and brujol and, you know, that kind of stuff. And
Which
she
is
didn't,
good, you know.
fettuccine.
Hey,
She had
it's
no
gumballs.
idea. So I didn't know what soul food was. So for a little while there in my life, I was going around and everybody know, hey, what's soul food? You know, but I heard about Eric Clapton and I heard the Cream and I was like, whoa, hold on a sec.
Yeah. Well, and Hendrix came out, Jimi Hendrix. I mean, there was a lot of...
And of course, Terry Kath was the biggest influence.
And
for me.
Bowie, you know, whole sudden that whole glam rock thing came out.
But if you remember
So
the
it was nice.
Chicago thing, remember we'd go to the Chicago shows?
Yeah, yeah. We went to
And
see
Terry
it.
Kath was a huge influence on me, huge. And, you know, Jimi Hendrix called him the greatest rock and roll
Yeah, it's
guitar
all right.
player.
Yeah, we used to go with our little tape recorders, a little reel-to-reel,
Yeah.
and we taped them playing, and we would learn the songs from
Before they were on the
before they
record.
were on the record. And
Before they were
and the
released.
band would go out and play these. Yeah, this is one coming out from Chicago.
That was a horn band.
Yeah, that was a horn band.
horn band.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was a tremendous influence.
So, after all these years, what's the recommendation for anybody else who has rock and roll in their brains, young people, and
I don't know. I'd say just play. I think the best thing is get together with your buddies, right?
Yeah.
You got to have a band, and that's what we did.
And
we
we're
got
still
together,
buddies, and we still get
and
together.
we're still buddies, and we still get together and play. And I think if you want to play popular type of music or this type of music, let's say non-classical, I think getting together with one person or more is that's kind of the turning point. That's when it really becomes fun. Up until that point, even now, there's woodshedding at home by yourself.
Yeah.
But when you're with the guys, it's a completely different thing. It turns a bad day good, actually.
Yeah.
Wow, I just made up a kind of a nice saying.
It
does.
Kind of nice.
It'll take a bad day and make you forget about it and turn it good for a while.
Yeah, we used to have garage band.
That's what it was, garage
bands.
bands.
We'd get together and have a good time, and get the police to arrive to tell us to stop.
Were you at my mom's house? Did you play with me then? I had the cops at my mom's house a couple times.
Yeah,
we were playing out in the backyard.
At the backyard, yeah.
Playing in my mom's backyard and hear the cops show up. And I found out years later it was my neighbors who called. And we're calling the cops,
we used to play
us for the noise.
We played at Terry Bossler's garage and basement up there. The South Temple people would tell us to get there.
There he is right over there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
well...
Yeah, the cops, we'd play the music and the cops would come.
They were nice. They just said,
Well, how do you like that?
Yeah.
When you think about it.
Yeah, and here we are, and the cops.
Here we are, pillars of the community.
Yeah. Well, on that note,
pretty funny.
On that note, maybe we got to wrap this up.
Okay.
That
sounds good.
And it's been so glad to see you again.
Mike.
Happy to see you, and I'll
Mike,
see you
always
in
good
the
to talk
future.
with you.
And
share some of these stories as we always do.
appreciate you coming. Thanks.
Appreciate your friendship, Mike.
Thank you.
you.